All right, welcome into a special No Huddle edition of another Carolina podcast. I'm Wes Mitchell with Chris Clark, looking to add Monday editions of the show throughout the college football season. Of course, we will still always have our Wednesday from the studio edition, but I'm going to knock out a remote edition today and talk a little bit about South Carolina's 72-10 win over Charleston Southern on Saturday. And, of course, if you like the podcast, I want to invite everyone to rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, every podcast episode is brought to you by Terry Bishop Real Estate and, of course, Slotsky's Deli. We'll tell you a little bit more about those later on. But, Chris, let's get right down to it. I think, when I was thinking about the game on Saturday, the thing that kept coming into my mind is that, this was needed for everybody. I think the fan base, certainly the coaches, the players, Ryan Hilinski, I mean, this thing, just to get a big win, to sort of take care of business. We all know Charleston Southern's not a great football team, but just to sort of do what they were supposed to do, get everybody in the game, a much-needed day there at Williams-Brice Stadium for this football program.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Wes. It's a situation where it was a catharsis of sorts for South Carolina.
Yeah.
You got a deal where South Carolina had just such a tough loss to North Carolina in week one. They lose Jake Bentley. But there was some excitement, to be honest, just about Ryan Hilinski, just because of the level of accolades he had coming in. The fact that this Charleston Southern team did not project to be a very good football team, like you said. And I was impressed with what South Carolina did. I realized the level of competition, and Will Muschamp noted that several times. He noted it at halftime. He noted it going into the week. He noted it, at the press conference afterwards, that they felt like that's what they should do. But when you beat an opponent by 62 points, no matter who it is, pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. They're pretty clean. That Charleston Southern team, and I told you this leading up to the week, if you remember, it was probably, I was trying to go back and think about all the games that I've watched and covered since I've covered South Carolina in 10 years. They're probably the most inferior opponent I've seen South Carolina play. And that's not a slight on their coaching staff, their players, their program. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think still impressive what the Gamecocks did. They dominated the line of scrimmage. They got open. They ran the ball extremely well. They put up 775 yards of offense, and they played well defensively, especially when the starters were in, which was not for very long. They got a ton of guys in this game.
Yeah, I think, you look at it, first of all, on the stats, there's no one listed under punting on the South Carolina column, which is
right.
is always a good sign. Not a single punt in the game. Man, I'm thinking – when the first team defense was out there against Charleston Southern, they gave up the one sort of long run down the left sideline early on. They had the PI that I thought was questionable at best.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, against Izzy Mukwamu. Other than that, this Charleston Southern offense really didn't even put a dent in South Carolina's defense. And, Javon Kinlaw early on, I don't know why. I don't know how his Pro Football Focus grade is not higher, because he's just smashing the guard back into the backfield early on in that game before they took him out. So I thought up front South Carolina just dominated them, but that obviously gets overshadowed by the debut of Ryan Hilinski, and this kid I think just handled everything that was thrown at him. Obviously, we'll probably say it 10 times, the opponent matters, but just to go control the offense, I thought he was decisive. I thought that was the biggest thing. When he saw what he was looking for, the ball came out. And, we've talked about his quick release before, but just seeing it again, seeing it time after time, one of the quickest releases I've seen for a South Carolina quarterback. And that's both from a physical standpoint of literally being able to physically get the football out. But I thought just mentally as well, when he saw it, he trusted it, he got the football out. He's got a very unique – he's sort of he gets his feet under him. He doesn't really have to sort of wind up before he gets the ball out. He just fires it. And, I thought, played very, very well. Obviously took what was there. I was trying to watch Charleston Southern from a defensive standpoint. They dropped back a lot. Lots of quarters coverage, some cover three, but everything was zone, backed off. And, to Hilinski's credit, he took what was there. He swung the ball out. to the receivers in the screen game. He got the ball out to Markway and Nick Muse making his debut. Swung the ball out to the tailbacks. And then when he saw opportunities, he did attack a bit down the field. But I thought all in all, man, you probably couldn't have scripted a better start for Ryan Hilinski.
Sure. And I think you got to obviously the main storyline for people who are sort of downplaying his performance is we'll consider the opponent. Well, we are. You're considering the opponent for sure. Nobody's discounting that. I don't think anybody expects him to come out against Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Texas A&M, any other SEC program, and for South Carolina or Ryan Hilinski to look that dominant. But I think there are things you can take away. How does he handle the moment? I mean, it is a college football game, and it's his first one. He's a true freshman, and you didn't really see any nerves. You saw him make good decisions. That was another thing. I mean, it doesn't matter who's playing zone. You got some reads to make. And so sometimes you saw him get the ball out quickly, which I think is something that they wanted him to do, especially in game one. But it's also something that he's shown an ability to do, whether it's in high school or even if you look at practice or you look at the spring game, does a good job of being decisive and going through his reads. And he took what was there. He made some big throws. You look at the throw to Brian Edwards downfield. I mean, that's honestly in week one, that's what South Carolina was missing. Hit some guys open in stride. And whether or not he'll be able to consistently do that this season throughout, it'll get tougher. But he did it. He showed a lot of different kinds of throws. He threw it with touch. He was able to get it out on some screens and sort of put it out in front of his receivers so they had some room to run, sort of gave him a head start, if you will. He made the touch throws to Brian Edwards. We saw the throw where he was rolling out to his left and sort of whipped it across his body. I think that was to Shi Smith, wasn't it? Where he was rolling the opposite way and sort of flicked it out there. Showed some impressive arm strength, but also threw it with touch and was decisive. So I think there was a lot to like about the performance, even considering the opponent. And you got to also consider it's Ryan's first game. So a lot of positives there, I thought.
Yeah, I thought to your point, the underneath stuff, some of it's a shorter throw, obviously, but those balls are accurate, not just from a standpoint of, can they catch it, but as you said, can they catch it where they need to keep their stride, and I thought he was decisive, but also patient on some of those slants, where he's having to put the ball in a window in between, two zone defenders. The ball was delivered where it needed to be. It had the right amount of touch plus the right amount of heat. I thought just all in all, didn't look like a freshman out there. And like you said, no sign of nerves whatsoever. Just was calm, collected, which I think as much as we've sort of talked to Ryan over the, years now, actually, that's probably what we expected from that standpoint. But you never know until you go see what a guy does, in the big stadium in front of all those people, TV audience, all that stuff. But yeah, certainly a great debut. And, the thing I liked, and we'll sort of turn it to Dakereon Joyner here as well. But the thing I liked, you saw Dakereon Joyner sort of get his chance to show what he can do. And when Joyner scored that touchdown, first guy off the sideline to go greet Joyner is Ryan Hilinski. I think you sort of see that they've said all the right things about the quarterback room and everybody being on the same page, but you sort of saw it. I was actually watching Ryan during Joyner's long, 41-yard run, I think it was, and Ryan's just jumping up and down, fist pumping, pumped up about this play, about his friend, So the quarterback room, you saw Jake Bentley over there, I think praying with the other two guys before the game started. Bentley's right there every step of the way with Ryan Hilinski, and I think you sort of saw the camaraderie there with that bunch. And man, again, regardless of opponent, I left saying number 7. Got to find a way to keep him on the field in some way. I think, Ryan Hilinski's a big part of this clearly, but I think moving forward, Dakereon Joyner going to be a big part of this offense as well.
Yeah, he looked natural. No matter what he's doing, he looks natural at it. Obviously, we haven't seen him go back there and play quarterback full time and make all those throws and stand in the pocket. We haven't seen that, but he's just such an effective slash type player, a guy you can put under center or put him out wide. He can do a lot of different things for you. And we saw him do a little bit of all those things. He threw one pass in the game, and that was it. But, his catch in the ball game, he had a 12-yard catch, and he's lined up and he runs an out route. So it's not like they're just throwing a bubble screen to him or a little hitch. I mean, he's running an out, and Hilinski made another – it was a really nice throw. That's a more difficult throw than people, think. And he put it right there, and DeCarrion called it out in front with his hands. I mean, looked like a natural wide receiver. But then you see him back at quarterback running the zone read stuff. He can do that. Saw on the long run that you referenced a minute ago, making some guys miss. Got to be a little bit more careful with the ball security, I think, as the opponent, as the competition level ratchets up. But those are the types of things he can do. He's an elusive guy. He's a powerful guy in the lower body, can make some people miss. So I think his role on this team, he's going to be an important part of this team as an offensive player as they progress throughout the season.
Yeah, and on that out route, man, the thing I liked about it is, the ball's out in front, like you said, and Joyner just reaches out there and snatches it. A lot of times guys transitioning to receiver, they want to sort of cradle the football. They want to make sure that they catch the ball as opposed to just naturally catching the ball out in front with their hands and continuing – a running motion, continuing their gait. So I thought that for Joyner, just the way he catches the football, he looks very comfortable. And I think that package will continue to expand. I like the fact that they have him on the field with Feaster on one side and Rico Dowdle on the other. I think Dowdle has looked outstanding through 2 games. And, Feaster, we've talked all offseason about some of the things that Feaster can do as a receiver. And I think putting those 2 guys in the backfield together, and now you can motion Feaster out into the formation and do some different things with him, without having to go empty. You still have a back in the backfield that they have to account for too. I think there are some mismatch things that you can do there. And, just all in all, the offense, I think top to bottom, it's hard to find much wrong with it. Offensive line, you had some guys who were able to get their feet wet, making their first career starts, Javon Gwynn, Jordan Rhodes there at guard. I thought having Donnell Stanley, you watch him direct traffic, that was a big thing too. So offense, top to bottom, I think you saw a lot of good things there. Real quick, Chris, you want to tell everybody, I know we have a segment on our Wednesday show, but also you want to tell everybody real quick about Terry Bishop and what those guys have done with the Bishop Real Estate Group, just sponsoring our Gamecock football coverage this year. Yeah,
absolutely. Terry Bishop, former Gamecock quarterback and a huge supporter of the Gamecocks football program still. He's been around Columbia a long time in the real estate business, 36 years of experience. Wes, I know that our listeners, our readers, our subscribers, they want, when it comes to business dealings, whether it's real estate or anything else, they want people who know what they're doing, A, and B, are Gamecock supporters. And Terry Bishop's both of those. So Bishop Real Estate Group, Terry Bishop, his wife Becky, they got a cockaboose for sale right now for a really good deal. And I wish I could get in on that thing. So, whether it's buy, sell, invest in real estate, Terry Bishop, give him a call. Facebook.com/the Terry Bishop team is a good way to check those guys out.
Yeah, and 803-665-1442. I'm looking at is their number. And, hey, Brian Shoemaker, boss man, if you're listening, hey, let's make that the Gamecock Central cockaboose. I mean, I'll gladly spend our boss's money. I don't know if I personally have the money, but that'd be pretty sweet, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we could outfit that cockaboose and be there every week and maybe do a podcast from there. I think it'd be pretty neat.
Yeah, I'm always down for that, man. Let's talk a little bit of defense. I really don't know, as much as you can't take a ton offensively. I think you can take a little bit. Some of the stuff we talked about defensively. The CSU offense just really struggled, and some of that is because of South Carolina's defense. Some of that's just that they were completely, outmatched up front. Even when they had some guys open, couldn't hit them for the most part, put the ball in jeopardy. But, I think, I guess there is something to be said for the South Carolina defense just doing what it was supposed to do. I thought early on, you see some of these games, and we've seen it for South Carolina, you give the opponent hope. I thought South Carolina's defense just buried Charleston Southern's offense, and just showed them, hey, this ain't happening today. Even you had the early turnover for South Carolina that kind of gets forgotten. But I felt so bad for Nick Muse. Gets his first catch as a Gamecock and fumbles it, but the defense just shut CSU right down after that again. No hope whatsoever. Controlled it up front, tackled much better. Don't remember a ton of forced missed tackles there, at least when the first team group was on. I thought JT eBay getting back. He flew around, didn't look to be bothered at all by the the injury that had been hurting him. I think he helped solidify that secondary a little bit moving forward. But was there anybody starting unit, first of all? We'll get to the some of the young guys that got in there. Was there anybody just from the veterans or the starting group that caught your eye? I mean, I thought everybody for the most part played pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kinlaw, and he only played 18 snaps in the game, so he wasn't out there.
It was just mashing people.
He just mashed everybody, and look, that's what he should do. I mean, exactly, and there shouldn't be a ton of carryover. I mean, South Carolina's defensive line should dominate that front, but again, look, there have been plenty of games in the past where you've seen FCS opponents on both lines of scrimmage against South Carolina, and everybody in the stadium and all the media people like us are sitting there going, why are they not dominating this game more? So, I mean, they did what they should have done. And I think, look, Charleston Southern, even by FCS standards, is a substandard team on that level. But they just, like you said, they left no doubt about it. So, Charleston Southern, the other thing, they didn't have like the option game to sort of neutralize the talent differential. There was none of that. They're out there running the air raid. So basically they're running air raid principles in the pass game, and they're running zone read on offense. So aside from the one run that they sprung for about 40-something yards, there just wasn't much there. I thought Kinlaw did very well as far as starters. Ernest Jones, and T.J. Brunson had good games. eBay, I'm with you. eBay did a really nice job sort of running the alleys and being physical out there and sort of giving them a presence. He had a little bit of an edge to him, and I think that's something that'll help them a lot going forward.
Yeah, definitely. You saw some guys make plays on the ball down the field, some turnovers. And, I think it's something we've talked about a bit, man. Actually getting a big lead on somebody allows you to put some guys out there. To me, it's not a bad thing. If you're up by 40, 50 points, it's not a bad thing for your young guys to get out there. And even if they're making mistakes, you can go play fast and learn from mistakes. And, I think you look out there. At one point, Chris, you had Joe Anderson in there. You had Rod Fenton at Buck. You had Zach Pickens at one of the defensive tackle spots and Rick Sandage at the other defensive tackle spot, all at the same time. At linebacker, I don't think they were on the field at the same time necessarily, but at linebacker you saw Jamar Brown get in there actually fairly early in the game. And then later on, Derek Boykins Brooks, I believe is now his last name. He's got Boykins Brooks on his jersey. But, so Derek Boykins gets in there. At one time, you actually had Johnny Dixon, Cam Smith, Shiloh Sanders, and Jamie Robinson all on the field at the same time in the secondary. Later on, we got to see Darius Rush, who's making that transition over from wide receiver to cornerback and has done some good things in practice, I hear. I thought it was just kind of cool to see the future of the South Carolina defense, sort of a glimpse of what it could look like moving forward. And I thought those guys, did some good things. Obviously, they gave up some plays too, but that's to be expected. And it's just good. It's good for team morale, but it's good for development. And this new redshirt rule, I think we saw coaches sort of try to figure out last year how exactly they wanted to use it. But I think, if you're South Carolina, you're looking ahead at the schedule. How many opportunities are you going to be up this big on teams? Throw everybody out there this week. And even if they're going to, be redshirt guys, you can sort of just, hey, we're going to play guys. That's one game. They still have 3 and they can redshirt. So I think that you saw the new redshirt rule or newer redshirt rule, second year it's in play, sort of be taken advantage of.
Yeah. And that was something I mentioned to somebody over the weekend, Wes, as far as the defensive line. And I think there was some, understandable frustration after North Carolina at every position, but a lot of people are going, okay, this defensive line is supposed to be so much deeper. they gave up 2 90-plus yard drives to North Carolina. And again, I think we're going to see as the competition picks up, was that more of an aberration or was it a symptom of sorts, something that we're going to see recur? I think we'll find out pretty soon. I think, some of the teams on the schedule are going to have offensive success against this defense regardless, just because they're really good offensive teams. But I think, the performance and the level that even the backups played to, I think was a positive. I remember even during the height of the Spurrier era, when the defensive line had all that talent, if you got down to, say, the third group, it's some walk-on guys. Or, Brad Lawing used to play long snappers in the spring game at the defensive line. You didn't see any of that. So when you get down to the second or third group, it's former top 50 recruit Rick Sandage and it's Zach Pickens and it's Joe Anderson, who was a Rivals, 4-star guy, and it's Rod Fitton, who was a, pretty highly recruited guy. So Tyreek Johnson got out there, saw his first action. I thought Jabari Ellis did some really good things when he was in there. He's a guy that had a really good preseason after he redshirted last year. So, again, competition level, yes, we understand. But you look at some of the bodies and the talented guys that they're able to put out there to get them some extra work. I think that's going to serve them well this season and going forward.
Yeah, no doubt. Man, I tell you, I thought I know it was late in the game. I thought Joseph Anderson flashed a bit of, some of the stuff we talked about this offseason, that the staff have been very impressed with him as a pass rusher. I think you saw that flash a little bit. I thought Jamar Brown just moving around out there, showing some physicality as well, breaking up a play, making a hit that sort of separated a receiver from the ball. I like a lot of what you see from those guys, at least athletically. They're still learning. And, the freshmen, just getting out there is big for all those guys. Johnny Dixon did some things, had an interception. And let's swing it back to offense, because we have to talk about Kevin Harris. This is a dude, first of all, camp eval, a guy that South Carolina gets him in, likes him on film, but wants to see him in camp, wants him to run, wants to get the 40-yard dash time and, in their own building, that type of stuff. And, they were sold on him. They took him, not a bunch of major offers, but, you and I had both heard some really positive things about what he had done in practice. And I think we saw some of it, some explosiveness, but just the balance, dude, the strength of this guy. It left me sort of like, okay, we've talked about the future of this running back position. What's it going to look like? I think now you sort of start to have a feel, obviously, hold on to Marshawn Lloyd for next year. But I started to say, okay, that's probably their two guys for next season. They want to maybe add a third, obviously. But, I thought Kevin Harris, despite, or on top of just the raw numbers there, which are insane, I think, 146 yards and 3 touchdowns on 6 carries?
Or maybe 6 carries,
okay,
7 snaps. I'm sorry, yeah, 7 snaps.
Yeah, 7 snaps, 6 carries, 147 yards. Didn't want to –
He shorted him one.
Take away didn't want to short you there, Kevin. 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. And, hey, for this year, I actually really liked the little wrinkle we hadn't seen yet, at least, in the first game. But the I formation with Kevin Harris as your quote, lead blocker, but they actually did sort of twice. They did a little, like, fullback dive with your offensive lineman turned tight end, Chandler Farrell, leading up in there as sort of an H-back almost. And that's a wrinkle we're going to see in short yardage moving forward, I'm pretty sure. When you just look at Kevin Harris's, I've compared him to Mine Denson, I think, as a player coming in. But, I think you got to love what you saw from Kevin Harris in a number of different areas.
For sure. And they are similar backs. I mean, north-south type of guys. And Mine Denson obviously had some nice runs in that ball game. What was it, a 57-yard touchdown run as well? But man, you'd be hard pressed to find a more efficient performance than what Kevin Harris turned in. When you have 6 carries and 3 of them are touchdowns, that's not bad. No matter the competition, and he did all kinds of good things for South Carolina in this game. You go and what is it, 3rd and 1, or was that a 4th down where he converted the play you were talking about?
Yeah, there was
It
a
was a
fourth and
4th and 1, and
one.
obviously,
Yeah.
no matter opponent, that's something where South Carolina fans are sitting there going, "Can they get this?" You know, and so they
Yeah.
put him out there at fullback. They give him the ball, and he gets plenty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the kind of guy he is. Extremely powerful, huge lower body. He impressed people right from the get-go in the weight room and on the field with some of the things he did from a power standpoint. He's tough to tackle, and Charleston Southern obviously didn't want any part of trying to tackle him. It was very difficult for them. The 75-yard run was about as impressive as you can get. I don't care who you're playing against.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the balance level, finishing that run with the power that he showed was really something that was excellent. And so sometimes that's what you need. You need a guy that can go get you some between the tackles yards, or if he breaks it outside, can run through contact. And Kevin Harris is going to be a dude that's going to run through contact pretty much as much as you possibly can. He may not make as many guys miss in space, but he's going to get you some tough yards.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Rico Daddle, 10 carries, 8.7 yards per carry. Tavian Feaster, 6 carries, 10.7 yards per carry. Joyner, 13.2 yards a carry on 4 rushes. Mon Denson, 13.1 yards per carry on 9 rushes. And then Kevin Harris, as we said, 6 rushes, 147 yards, 24.5 yards per carry. Not a typo. And dude, hey, let's be honest, man. Regardless of opponent, if Kevin Harris was named Marshawn Lloyd, like if this was the 4-star, 5-star guy coming in, and Kevin Harris had made this debut and looked like that, we'd be talking about Kevin Harris right now as like, man, this guy is the next big thing at South Carolina,
as advertised.
So,
yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, so you got to like that. We'll get a ton into Alabama in our big show, our longer show that we do every Wednesday in studio. But I did want to mention, man, I think it was worth mentioning. Again, opponent notwithstanding, South Carolina did what they were supposed to do. And I think I'm guilty as well at times. We get caught up in one game as being the season. And obviously the North Carolina loss was a bad look for South Carolina. But don't look now. But that North Carolina squad, Chris, is 2-0.
Yeah.
So, they beat Miami, which I don't think Miami's a great team either. But, North Carolina maybe finding a way to win games a bit with a little bit of a boost from a new coach, a new excitement. I think if you replay that game against North Carolina, I still think South Carolina wins the game. 7 out of 10 times, I think. I might be wrong, but let's see where this season goes. And I think you start to look, especially as difficult as this schedule is, as far as the big three we always talk about. If we look at the other games, let's go around the SEC a bit. Real quick scoreboard. Clemson beats Texas A&M 24-10. That game, that last 7 points was literally the very end of the game. So Clemson, I felt like controlled that game throughout. Let's see, where did it go? I lost it here. Florida wins 45-0, but that's still a team that I think we all have our questions about. Missouri bounces back and wins 38-7 over West Virginia. I think West Virginia's down a bit this year, but Missouri only 1-1. Vanderbilt gets beat 42-24 by Purdue to fall to 0-2 on the season. Tennessee falls to 0-2 with opening season losses to Georgia State and BYU on their home turf. Kentucky beats Eastern Michigan 38-17. Has not necessarily looked dominant at all in week 1 or 2. So, dude, you look around and, okay, South Carolina could lose any game on their schedule, I think, to be honest. But also you look at some of these other games and you say South Carolina could win about any other game on their schedule too, except for maybe, sort of that big three. So, we'll see where this season goes. I think, like you talked about, or like's been talked about on our message board, there's a little bit more hope in Columbia, South Carolina. Some of that just seeing what Ryan Hilinski can do. And, some of that is things evening out a little bit. The sky did not fall. We'll see what happens this week. Can they hang in there against Alabama? Who knows? That's tough for anybody, man. But, I think you start to sort of settle in and say, all right, this season is not over, after 2 weeks or after 1 week for a lot of people last week. there's still many probably ups and frankly downs to go for the 2019 Gamecocks.
Yeah, for sure. And how different would it be if they had just won that game against North Carolina and then had that dominant performance last? I mean, it'd be a lot different feel, but it is what it is.
Yep.
That's where they're at. And to some degree, I mean, fans and media alike who've covered this program for a while, we've been through this. I mean, we've seen some really, really good South Carolina teams lose against, just have a random stinker against. I mean, that Auburn in 2011? You know, Tennessee in 2013, were those really that much better of a team than North Carolina? You know, I think the timing was awful of losing that game. You know, after a long off season and et cetera. But again, like you said, Wes, I think most of the games, to be honest, on this schedule are toss-ups, except for, you know, there are a handful of games you would not favor South Carolina in, and they would be Alabama, Georgia, Clemson. Probably wouldn't favor them against A&M. The rest of them, sort of toss them in and mix them up. But South Carolina's capable of winning. All those teams have questions. I mean, Kentucky lost their starting quarterback, Terry Wilson, for the season. And so there's a lot there. I think the outlook would be different if it's 2-0, but they're not. There's still a long season. There's still 10 games to go. There's some opportunities there to turn things around and to still turn in a good year. The SEC East is still pretty wide open aside from Georgia. So see where things go.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong, but I left thinking – obviously, the Texas A&M game is in Texas A&M, but I still have a ton of questions about Kellen Mond as a quarterback as far as consistency in the passing game. South Carolina is going to be an underdog on the road in that game, we know, but you know they played Texas A&M tight, so you know they're not going to be favored, obviously. But I sort of look at that game and say, you know, maybe Carolina has a chance to pull off a big win there as we sort of look ahead. Around the SEC, the rest of the scores, just if anybody's curious, Alabama kicks in New Mexico State's teeth 62-10. Not a score South Carolina fans like. 63-17, Georgia over Murray State. Auburn 24. Said earlier, Florida 45-0 over UT Martin. Purdue over Vandy. Mississippi State beat Southern Miss 38-15. And Ole Miss beats Arkansas in the battle for the SEC West cellar, 31-17. And interesting game. Obviously, LSU beating Texas goes to 2-0. Big win for them, 45-38. Puts themselves potentially in that conversation for the college football playoff. Chris, do you have any other takeaways just outside of South Carolina around the college football or SEC landscape? Anything catch your eye?
Well, I will go to the SEC for just a second. Tennessee, I mean, that was rough. I mean, their win probability was off the charts. All they had to do, literally, I mean, they were in 3 deep coverage, and Alontae Taylor just lets a guy run right past him. I don't know what he was doing. And then BYU ends up, you know, still, it's not like you lose the game on that play. You still got to surrender a field goal. You go to overtime. But you know, it's going to get really interesting there. 2 brutal losses, especially the Georgia State one to start the year. And, you know, Georgia State was in a dogfight with Furman this past weekend. Furman's a good ball club. But they were actually – Georgia State was down early and came back and won a close one. But, you know, 2 bad losses for Tennessee before they get into conference play. Their quarterback situation is really the most glaring thing. Jarrett Garantano has not been good the first couple weeks. And I'll be curious to see if they open up things in that quarterback competition. That would be interesting, but I would not rule it out because he's really he's been fairly rough the first couple weeks. Their offensive line also has really struggled.
Yeah, you know, I was just looking at the FPI, the Football Power Index from ESPN, Chris, and early on preseason, they actually had, I believe, South Carolina has like a 30-something% chance of beating Tennessee only, which kind of surprised me, even though that game is in Knoxville. That number has completely shifted. South Carolina now with a 64% chance of beating Tennessee in Knoxville, at least according to FPI. Some of these other numbers have shifted as well. 69% now for South Carolina to beat Kentucky, which I believe is up from the start of the season. 44.4% against Missouri, which I think is actually down a little bit, and 85.1% chance to beat Vanderbilt, which I think is up. This week, though, 13.8% chance of South Carolina beating Alabama, according to FPI. I actually, yeah, that it could be worse, honestly. I mean, that number's a little bit higher than I suspected. So anyway, we'll talk more about Alabama, that game on our podcast later on. Want to thank, again, Slotsky's Deli. We'll tell you more about the Slotsky's Pick'em contest. We'll go a little bit more in depth about that in the show later on this week. But I want to thank Terry Bishop Real Estate Group and Slotsky's Deli for supporting all of our podcasts, and Terry Bishop for supporting all of our Gamecock football coverage. For Chris Clark, I'm Wes Mitchell. We'll see you later this week.